Okay, so let's dive in, folks. We got to talk about DeepSeek V3. It's making huge waves, like everyone's talking about it. Not just the usual AI hype either. This feels way bigger.
Yeah, it's not just another announcement. DeepSeek V3 really seems like a turning point. We're going to break down exactly why everyone's so excited about this, what it can do, and maybe even speculate a bit on how it could change the game for AI as a whole.
So to start, DeepSeek made a pretty bold move right out the gate. They decided to release this thing under the MIT license, which might sound a little technical, but trust me, this is a big deal.
Huge deal, yeah. Especially considering DeepSeek's past. Their earlier open source stuff had way more restrictions. They were holding things pretty close to the vest. But with the MIT license, it's like they've basically said, go wild, use it, build on it, make it your own.
It's almost like giving away the secret formula for a world-famous dish, right? Just asking for a little credit in return. So what happens when you give that much freedom to developers and companies and everyone in between? I mean, what could this kind of open access lead to in the tech world?
Well, we've seen this kind of open source magic before. It's like a recipe for explosive innovation. When you remove the barriers to entry, especially for smaller teams and startups without a ton of cash, you get an explosion of creativity. Suddenly, anyone can build something amazing with this technology, things that might have been impossible under a more locked-down license.
So more brains working on the problem means we might see some wild, unexpected breakthroughs. And speaking of breakthroughs, people aren't just excited about the open nature of DeepSeek V3. They're talking about its sheer speed. What have you heard about that?
The speed reports are pretty mind-blowing. It's generating text at an insane pace. Some early tests clocked it at around 20 tokens a second on a Mac Studio. To put that into perspective, a token is roughly equivalent to a word or part of a word. That's a lot of words per second. And get this, they're achieving this using a technique called 4-bit quantization.
All right, 4-bit quantization. That sounds pretty technical. Can you break it down for us non-engineers? What's the secret sauce there?
Okay, so imagine these AI models have like millions of internal settings. These parameters determine how the model processes information, and these parameters usually take up tons of digital space. But 4-bit quantization basically compresses those parameters, like squeezing a huge file down to a smaller size. This makes the model run way more efficiently. And the crazy part, you can run these powerful models locally on your computer without needing those giant server farms that cost a fortune.
So you're telling me I could run a top-line AI model right here on my desk? That's a game changer in terms of cost and accessibility.
For sure. And the fact that they're pulling these speeds on a Mac Studio. Now, those aren't typically the first choice for these cutting-edge AI models, right? It's not your typical server farm setup. It really shows how optimized this DeepSeek V3 is, how efficiently it uses resources.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Though I did see that the particular Mac Studio setup they used cost around $9,500. That's not exactly pocket change for most people.
Right. Obviously, not everyone's going to rush out and buy a $10,000 computer, but for businesses, it's a steal. Compared to building or renting massive server clusters, a workstation like that is incredibly cost-effective. You get crazy processing power in-house without those ongoing cloud costs. So while it might not be in everyone's home office just yet, it's a game changer for companies big and small.
Okay, so DeepSeek V3 is open source, it's super fast, and it can run locally. Pretty impressive so far. Let's talk about how it actually works. I keep hearing about something called a mixture of experts. What's going on under the hood?
So this is where DeepSeek V3 gets really interesting. It doesn't use all its processing power all the time. It's got a total of 67 billion parameters. That's massive. But for any given task, it only uses around 37 billion.
Wait, so it has 67 billion, but only uses 37 billion. Why not just use all of them?
Think of it like this. Imagine a team of specialists. You wouldn't call a brain surgeon to fix a leaky faucet, right? DeepSeek V3 breaks its massive model down into smaller, specialized networks, like a team of experts. When you ask it a question, it figures out which expert is best suited to answer and activates only that part of the network.
Ah, okay. So it's like having a really smart traffic controller inside the AI, sending each problem to the right department.
Exactly. That's the mixture of experts concept. It's the key to DeepSeek V3's incredible efficiency. By not using all 67 billion parameters for every single question, it saves a ton of processing power and energy. It's a much more elegant and sustainable approach than just brute forcing it with a giant model.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, before we go any further, let's talk a bit about the model's origins. It was initially launched last December, right?
Yep, that's right. And the scale of the training for the initial DeepSeek V3 was just phenomenal. They poured in 2.8 million GPU hours. That's like crazy amount of computing power. And they trained it on a data set of 14.8 trillion tokens.
14.8 trillion. That's an insane amount of data. Like, how do you even wrap your head around a number like that? But I remember reading that even with all that, the training process was surprisingly cost-effective for a model of this size.
One of the key things they did was leverage the knowledge from DeepSeek R1, their reasoning-focused model. They essentially used R1 to tutor V3 during training, feeding it examples of how to solve complex problems. It's like giving V3 a crash course from a master problem solver.
Oh. So it learned from the best. That's fascinating. Now that you mentioned R1, the R obviously stands for reasoning. So how good is this more general V3 model at logical thinking and problem solving compared to its older sibling?
Well, it's important to remember that V3 isn't specifically designed for reasoning like R1. It's more of an all-arounder. But it still shows some serious chops in logic, coding, and problem solving. Some informal tests show it has about a 60% success rate at generating Python and Bash code. Not bad for a model that's not even focused on that.
60%. That's actually pretty impressive. So what about compared to the heavy hitters like R1 and models like QN72B?
So right now, it's still lagging behind those dedicated reasoning models. But here's the exciting part. The current V3 is basically a starting point. It hasn't even been fine-tuned for reasoning yet. Imagine what it could do once they add those specialized techniques on top of this already powerful base. It could blow R1 out of the water.
So they've built a super strong foundation, and now they can add all sorts of special skills on top of it. Now, another thing that has people talking is its context window. It's supposed to be enormous.
Enormous is putting it mildly. It has a context window of 128,000 tokens, or as they say, 128K. The context window is basically how much information the AI can hold in its mind at once, like how much of a conversation or a document it can remember while it's working.
128,000 tokens. Can you translate that into something a bit more relatable?
Okay, so think of a 300-page book. That's roughly the amount of information we're talking about. This is a huge leap forward. A lot of current AI models have tiny context windows, so they struggle to understand longer texts or conversations. But with this expanded window, DeepSeek V3 can analyze whole documents, hold coherent conversations, and work with massive data sets without getting lost. It removes a major bottleneck in AI.
So no more having to chop up long documents into tiny pieces. You can handle the whole enchilada.
Exactly. This opens up so many possibilities, summarizing legal documents, analyzing research papers, even having in-depth conversations with the AI can really dive deep into the information. And apparently, DeepSeek used a technique called YARN, which stands for yet another recurrent network, to handle this massive context window. It's basically designed to manage memory super efficiently over these long stretches of information.
Yarn. Sounds like it's weaving together all these threads of information in a smarter way. Okay, so how does DeepSeek V3 stack up against the competition? Where does it land on those standardized tests?
Well, on the ERS polyglot benchmark, it scored around 55%, which puts it behind models like Claude 3.5 Sonnet in terms of general purpose models. But keep in mind, this field is moving at lightning speed. And 55% on this benchmark is still really good. It shows a high level of understanding and text generation ability.
So it's definitely in the top tier of AI models. I also noticed some talk about a change in its communication style. It sounds like it's gotten a little more formal.
Yeah, that's something people have picked up on compared to earlier versions. DeepSeek V3 seems to have adopted a more structured, formal tone. It could be intentional. Maybe they're aiming for more professional applications where a straightforward style is better, but it might make it feel a little less relaxed or friendly in casual chat situations.
So a trade-off between precision and maybe a bit of warmth. Different strokes for different folks. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. We touched on this earlier. But the arrival of DeepSeek V3 comes at an interesting time geopolitically, especially with all the AI advancements coming out of China and the current tensions with the U.S.
Yeah, this adds a whole other dimension to the story. There have been reports of the Chinese government advising its top AI experts to be careful about traveling to the U.S. They're worried about security risks, like the possibility of detention or pressure to reveal information about China's AI progress.
It sounds like a spy movie or something. How does DeepSeek V3 factor into this global chess match?
DeepSeek's success is a major win for China in the global AI race. V3 has really made the world sit up and take notice of China's AI capabilities, and there were reports that DeepSeek's founder, Lian Zhenf, skipped a big AI summit in Paris recently. Some people think that was a deliberate move in light of all this tension.
It's all starting to sound very cloak and dagger. Have there been other Chinese AI leaders changing their travel plans too?
There have been rumors, yes, some unconfirmed reports saying that other big names in Chinese AI are canceling or postponing trips to the US. It reminds me of that incident with the Huawei executive a while back. It just goes to show that this AI race is getting tangled up with international politics. It's even affecting who can travel where.
High stakes indeed. This is about more than just who can code the smartest algorithms, about national pride, technological leadership, all of that.
Absolutely. Both China and the US are pouring money and resources into AI, and companies like DeepSeek are pushing the boundaries further and further. And remember, just a while ago, people were wondering if those US export bans on GPUs would slow China down. But DeepSeek V3 shows that they're finding ways to work around those restrictions. And get this, even former President Trump weighed in. He called DeepSeek V3 a wake-up call for America.
A wake-up call. That says it all. So let's wrap this up. What are the key takeaways here? What's the big picture for DeepSeek V3?
The bottom line is, DeepSeek V3 is a huge step forward for AI. It's incredibly powerful and efficient. It can handle insane amounts of information thanks to that massive context window. It's been trained on more data than most people can imagine, and that mixture of experts' design lets it run efficiently even on a high-end workstation. Plus, that open MIT license. That could unlock a wave of innovation from all sorts of unexpected places.
So it's fast, it's got a crazy good memory, it's efficient, and it's open for anyone to tinker with. Yeah, that's going to shake things up for sure.
No doubt. And when you consider all this in light of the global situation, it really makes you think, what's the next big breakthrough going to be? And how will this international competition, this race for AI dominance, shape the future? The whole field is evolving so fast, and DeepSeek V3 is a sign that things are just getting started.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you with that thought. Keep an eye on this space, folks, because the AI world is about to get even wilder.